Stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. Welcome to our Tuesday, May 23rd meeting. We're going to start with the consent agenda. We have approval of payroll for April 14th through April 28th and May 12th, 2023. We have approval of claims April 6th, April 13th, April 20th, and April 27th, May 4th, May 11th, and May 18th, 2023. Approval of minutes for March 27th and April 11th, April 13th, and April 24th, 2023. Weights and Measures Monthly Report, February 16th to March 15th, 2023, and March 16th to April 15th, 2023 filed. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I guess we have a second here.
No, second, I didn't know if
Okay.
Memorial Opera House was on the consent agenda or not. It used to be.
No, it's, I don't believe it is.
Second.
We have a motion for approval and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Memorial Opera House, Scott McDonald.
Morning.
Morning.
All right, we have several artistic services agreements and a venue rental agreement to approve this morning. The first three are for Little Shop of Horrors, our upcoming musical this fall. Kelly Staton for $800, Jesse Howe for $500, and Molly Oros for $600. And then we have the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which is our next show coming up. We're looking at Stephen Dean and Jordan Dollins, each for $1,200. Kevin McBride for $300, Angela Hyde for $500, and Samantha Zivkovich for $250. And then we have our season for next year. We're already starting to plan that. We have 3 shows that are under contract so far. First show royalties are $13,335. The second show royalties are $12,520. Third show is $11,560, and then we also have a master carpenter that we're bringing on, Derek DeRue, for $450. That's all of those. Any?
I have no questions.
Okay, great.
Either board have a question?
Nope.
I'm sorry, did you do the Beverly Shores?
No, I want to see if there were any questions here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And then we have a venue rental agreement for Beverly Shores Depot. They're doing a film festival in August, and that's a $500 rental.
Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Announcements, we have a citizen's appointment to the Stormwater Advisory Board, a single appointment to complete the term of Andy Vasquez, who was recently appointed to the Porter County Council. He cannot sit on both boards. The applicant must live or reside in the unincorporated area of Porter County. Do we have an applicant, Mark?
Yes, we do. We only had one application, Paul Hegan. I believe that's Hegan.
Okay.
And I'd like to nominate Paul Hegan.
Well, what do we know about him?
He has worked in the golf industry for 50 years, so he has experience in maintenance, management, construction, and ownership. Drainage is crucial on golf courses. So the ones he's been involved with have all had wetlands and areas of floodplain. He has experience with county drainage projects and the DNR. He has experience building wetland drainage and lakes. He's managed a lot of projects during that time, so I think he's a great applicant.
Could you spell his, Mr. Keegan's last name?
I believe it's Hegan. I'm just not sure if that's a G there or not. Or an L.
We'll go with
Maybe.
the G.
G? Oh, is he? G. Okay. Do you want to pronounce your last name? Hegan. Okay, I got it right.
I'll entertain a motion if you would like to.
I would like to nominate Paul Hegan for the Stormwater Advisory Board appointment.
Second.
We have a motion to appoint Mr. Hegan to the Stormwater was it the management board?
It's the advisory.
Advisory board.
Advisory board.
Yeah.
May we have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Welcome aboard. And thank you for volunteering. We have, many of you notice when you come into the rotunda, if you were looking up, you were looking at your shoes, at the large American flag in the rotunda that we recently had put up. Barb, is there any background on this? that you would like
We
to-
had a generous donor who would like to remain anonymous and was very appreciative of the resolution we passed on patriotism. And we will also be receiving a second flag. And our facilities director here is looking at an appropriate location for that other flag. We're thinking that we can't fit quite as large of a flag, so we're looking at possibly a slightly smaller flag than that. But on your way out, make sure you just look up in the rotunda so that you can see the flag.
That was probably very easy to put up, wasn't it?
With a little thought behind it, yes.
Well, thank you, Daniel. POCO Wellness Connection Employee Lunch.
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 Sorry. So we've been talking about this new initiative that we've started, multidisciplinary, multi-department, multi-agency across the county. And we are actually going to do an employee launch at noon at lunch on June 1st. And we are going to be explaining to the employees how they can access the portal on their phones so that they can get involved in some of the different activities that we are going to be starting. And one of the really fun and innovative ones we're doing is a virtual walk around Lake Michigan. So as you're getting your steps in daily, you're actually going to be plotted around, as if you were walking around Lake Michigan. And so when you get to certain areas, you're actually going to be presented with pictures and showing you where you are on your trek around Lake Michigan. But not only that, we are going to have some fantastic prizes, and that is to getting people encouraged and engaged as we launch, and so we're hoping that word will travel. But Commissioner Biggs has volunteered his parking place for a month. We're also going to offer a day of PTO, a half day of PTO, and we're also going to be encouraging different establishments in Porter County to donate gift certificates as prizes as well. This is just the first of many different ideas of things that we're going to be doing. And once we gauge the interest amongst the employees, then we're hoping to launch those to non-employees and everybody in Porter County. So that's a fun thing that we're doing right now.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how all this comes out. I think it's a wonderful program, and nothing, I can't think of anything but good that can come out of it, so. But I'm not going to tune into it to see how far I don't need that another disappointment in my life. Okay, now to Commissioner's business. We have a repeal of ordinance number 13-06, an ordinance creating a non-reverting fund for receipts of charitable donations for the Porter County Central Communications, first reading. Okay, we'll open it up to the public here. We'll start out with, Scott, you let me know if I missed anything here, okay?
Yeah, we're just repealing this. We have one that was the same type of ordinance was passed in 13 and in 2018. We don't need two of the same fund ordinances. This would repeal the older of the two versions.
Okay. So I'll open it up to the public for comment. We have all those in favor, or anybody who would wanting to speak in favor of repealing this ordinance, step forward. Anyone wanting to speak in favor of this ordinance, step forward. Last call, anyone wanting to speak in favor of this ordinance, step forward. Anyone wanting to speak against this ordinance, step forward. Anyone wanting to speak against this ordinance, step forward. Last and final call, anyone wanting to speak in favor of this ordinance, or speak against this ordinance, step forward. We'll close the public session. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we repeal ordinance number 13-06, an ordinance creating a non-reverting fund for receipt of charitable donations for Porter County Central Communications.
Do you have a second?
Second.
We have a motion to repeal ordinance number 13-06, an ordinance creating a non-reverting fund for receipts charitable donation for Porter County Central Communications.
We have to do it again next week, right?
Yep,
It's just
next
first
meeting.
reading,
Yep.
yeah.
First reading, sorry.
First, well,
I'm sorry, can I amend that and add first reading?
yeah, sure, that's fine.
Second. Agrees.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. The second reading at our next meeting. Memorial Opera House, new project list, Skillman cost analysis.
Jeff, you want to come up? Can we pull another chair up there?
You just sit there.
Okay.
You start out by introducing, we'll start at this end here, sir, and introduce yourselves, please, for the record.
Sure. My name's Jeff Lewis. I'm with Shive Hattery, but I'm a member of the Memorial Opera House Foundation Board.
Scott McDonald, I'm the executive director at Memorial Opera House.
Scott Cherry, construction manager with the Skillman Corporation.
Barb, you want to?
Sure, it's been a long and winding road to get to today. We have been trying to work collaboratively to come up with moving this project forward. And Scott McClure actually had an excellent suggestion that if we could agree to a list of things that we felt we could have 2 commissioners agree to and 4 council people agree to, that then we had a good chance of moving this project forward. And so we put on the roof, windows, exterior brick renovation, HVAC, auditorium seats and carpet, fixture upgrade to existing restrooms, front door, front of house tile wood, plaster repair, site improvements to entrances, plaza, sewer line, electrical upgrades, house lighting, and we also had additional restrooms on here. And I think our assistant just removed that. So what we did was we had that costed out, and the cost to do everything on that list on the low end came to roughly 4.7 million, and on the high end, 6.9 million. And we knew that we were working within the constraints of the $5 million ARPA ordinance that the commissioners passed in the November-December timeframe for the renovations. And so then I reached out to Jeff and I said that either we wanted to give the foundation some time to see if they could potentially raise that additional money for the restrooms, or if in the interest of just moving this project forward, to take it off at this time. And the decision, and I don't know who all you collaborated with on that decision, was to remove those so that we could actually move this project forward. And by the way, the foundation has also agreed that they are going to be responsible for the auditorium seats. So we thank you very much for your generous contribution in that regard. So when we take a look at now the high end of that, it is 4.67 million, and on the low end, roughly 2.3, or 2.8 million, 2.8 million to 4.7 million. And we had asked Skillman if they could put together this conceptual cost range estimate. And Scott Cherry, I don't know if you would like to just mention how you came to these numbers.
Sure. We've been estimating this project for a couple of years now and have a pretty good idea of the quantities and that's involved in the project. The difficulty in going through the exercise of estimating the list is that we don't necessarily have a full design on how we address some of these things. That's why you see quite a bit of range in there with costs. The other item that I'd like to mention is that there is a construction contingency on top of them numbers, and there's about a 7% design contingency on both the low end and the high end. And that's for, when we get into design, we can really think about how the design starts to develop and get better numbers as we progress through it. Other than that, the biggest thing was the additional restrooms. We talked about that, but that's off the table now. That was really driving the cost because, again, how you address that was difficult to do. So that's our numbers. Again, they're inflated to August of 2023. And be glad to answer any other questions you have.
What design fees, what in these projects, and we've taken the bathrooms out of it, what design fees are actually involved?
I'm not sure, but what I can say is that for the soft costs, for this project, I used 15%. And normally, the biggest items in the soft costs are your professional fees, which include the architect. Normally, you'd see a high cost for loose equipment, cost of financing, and technology. But on this project, there's not a heavy loose equipment need there. Technology is pretty much incorporated into the electrical. So there's money in the budget for architect fees and, of course, CM fees. What them fees are, it's yet to be determined by the scope. I can't remember the percent that the architect used Schmidt had, but it is covered if you added 15% in the soft costs.
So given that information, I mean, you would have to feel fairly confident that we would stay within that $5 million budget to complete that project.
Right, if I added 15% to the low end, yeah. Again, it's really zooming in on what actually we're doing and putting together a bid package and bid it competitively, publicly bid it, and that's going to answer your questions, how much it costs. We'll try to stay in that budget. I think we can do it if we work together.
Yeah. So the timeline that we collectively came up with is that today, the commissioners have an opportunity to approve this list and the cost estimate. We will take the same show to the council and do the same thing, assuming that we approve it here today. Then at the June 13th or June 12th meeting, you said June 12th was the next meeting. I'm not sure when our next meeting is, June 13th or June 12th.
Melody's off today.
But if the commissioners and a council approve the above list and the cost analysis, then the commissioners will vote on the amended Schmidt Associates and Skillman contracts. At that meeting, we then need to go to the, what day is it?
It's the 12th.
The 12th, sorry. We will then need to go to the council to have them appropriate the funds because they unappropriated them. Then we need them to reappropriate them. And then we will be able to move forward with the work, put together the bid package, and put it out to bid.
Well, I appreciate the timeline you wrote up there. It's just that there's a little adjustment there, is that if it is approved today, then we will go out to bid.
Yes.
And then once those bids return, we'll bring that forward to the county council
Right.
for their approval, since the $5 million has already been appropriated for that project, or it had been. For those of you who pay attention to what the commissioner's business or the county's business has been over the last several years, you know that this project has been in the forefront of much of what we've talked about especially the last couple of years. And, former Commissioner Good and current Commissioner Blaney have wanted to move that forward. I did not support that. It was all based on our ability to pay for all of it. At that time, we were looking at a project with the build out with the restrooms at an $8.5 million, and I knew we didn't have it. We just simply didn't have it at that time, without taking the money from something else to make up for that $3.5 million disconnection there. But I've always been in favor of fixing what's broken in that building. And that's the tuck pointing, that's the roof, that's the HVAC primarily. And Scott, I understand that, it's, the office space or the bathroom accommodations in that building are not ideal.
Sure.
But, we're county government, and, I have buildings that we deliver our core services out of that are in the same type of situation, at least in one case, worse. And it's not that I never wanted to support that.
Sure.
It's just that it's all about priority.
Absolutely.
And I think, I want to thank Barb for, coming on in January and grabbing this by the tail, so to speak, and bringing it to, to a decision today. And I think a decision needs to be made.
Sure.
First and foremost. And, as long as we can stay into that $5 million, and if, and the infinite wisdom of the county council is that they feel that we can spend $5 million on that building, I'm not going to question that.
Sure.
I don't sit on the fiscal or the financial arm of county government. I sit on the executive, and the executive is saying that building needs some attention. So I'll entertain a motion to move this forward, to go out to bid if somebody wants to make a motion.
Well, I have a few things
Oh, go
as
ahead.
well. First of all, in August of last year, the projected cost was 7.6 million, not 8.5. And it included both the Opera House and the sheriff's garage. Or not the sheriff's garage, the sheriff's residence. It was expensive. We did have the 5 million. We also had cooperation of the foundation and a willingness to cover the rest. So it was still kind of the same price, but in my opinion, we're getting a lot more. Today's numbers, of course, are inflated like everything else. It's closer to 9.5 million now. And that's just how it is. If we're looking at this project as a list of things that must be done, I don't think we need a plaza at $200,000, or maybe I got that wrong, 150 to 250,000. If we're just doing the bare needs, and there are some serious bare needs. I don't know what we're gonna do with the sheriff's residence. I know that I have things here about renting it out, but I don't know who would want to rent it in the state it's in. So we're gonna have to put some money into that too. But I will give my support. I know we had some volunteers at the Opera House, sweating, in doing nonsense and full nun regalia in 90-degree heat, and we just can't have that. So I will support this moving forward, although I do not think we need a plaza.
Okay, so you'll support it without the item of the...
I'll make a motion to support this list without the plaza.
Let's table that just for a second. I want to say something really quick, is that, Scott, I want to apologize to you and your staff for being caught up in the middle of this for the last 2 or 3 years.
Thank you.
You shouldn't have been. And, but, you're in the line of fire nevertheless. But I wanted you to hear that from me.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. I know the plaza was important, but what's more important is moving this along, and I'm going to, unless Barb wants to second Laura's motion, I will second Laura's motion to get this moving.
Sure. Okay.
You want to second it?
I thought you seconded.
No, I didn't.
Can I just wanted to discuss the plaza just briefly before we...
Sure, go ahead.
So the whole point was, because we weren't going to be doing the connector in between the two buildings, and by the way, we will be talking about the sheriff's residence shortly and addressing what we're hoping to do there. We were hoping that we would have a place that could be used by the community. It could be used by people that are using the Memorial Opera House, either because they're attending a performance or they're attending something else. It could also be used by the community. We would be cleaning up that area in between the two buildings and having it be more consistent with the look of the Arts District in downtown Valparaiso. So that was one of the things that we were hoping to accomplish, and why we wanted to do that.
It
Now-
sounds nice, it just doesn't sound like a need to me. I mean, we've really cut this list down to bare bones needs, and the people that have been in favor of this entire project have had to make a lot of compromises. And I don't hear any coming from the other side.
I don't know if you wanted to talk about the plaza at all, if you feel strongly about it, or Jeff, if you feel strongly about it, something in between?
I don't.
Then I have no objection of striking that off the list.
you know, what's important right now is to send a message to the county council that, you know, there's been a lot of contention about this project, and to show some unity here through an unanimous vote, I think, is what's needed right now. And I appreciate you doing that, and appreciate Laura supporting it. So Laura's made a motion, if you would like to second it.
I will second it.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Lost my minutes.
We're in the sheriff's residence right now,
Where are we at?
right here.
Number 3 under Commissioners.
There we are.
Daniel.
There was 03. Yeah, Daniel, coming up here. We got the sheriff's residence, receipt of appraisals, discussion about lease terms.
Scott, if you wouldn't mind, can you just recap for everyone all of the reasons why we had to have the appraisals, and what, in terms of why we're discussing lease terms today in our meeting, the requirements for a government agency to lease out one of their properties, and all of the restrictions that we're under?
So, as everyone I'm sure is surprised, there's a statutory guidance on exactly what the county government needs to do in order to lease one of its owned buildings. One of those first steps is to get a fair market rental analysis in this case, because we're attempting to rent. Some of the guidelines that Commissioner Regnance is pointing out is that if we are doing a 3-year or less lease, and the total lease is the total lease proceeds are less than $25,000 a year, the executive does not need the approval of the county council. If it's for a term longer than 5 years and
3 years.
Longer than 3 years, and or is more than $25,000 in total rent per year, then that requires the council to approve it also. There's some other steps, commissioners, if we proceed with this, the commissioners would have to make a written finding that it's in the best interest to lease and not sell. I think that's a pretty easy case to be made here. But what we've done so far is we've gotten 2 appraisals to tell us, in their opinion, what the fair market rent would be. That came in 2 distinct categories. The first category would have been just renting out the first floor. It's estimated that to get the first floor into a rentable state would be about, I'm going to round up slightly, about $120,000 to rent, to make the entire first and second floor of the sheriff residence rentable. That number is about $155,000. The fair market rent has, if it was a 3-year term for just the first floor, which is approximately 1,450 square feet, on a 3-year term, the fair market rent is about $23,886 for the entire year, which comes out to be $1,991 a month in rent. If the fair market rent for the main and upper level, so the entire first and second floor, which is just under 3,000 square feet, that was on a 5-year term, that would have a fair market annual rent of about $40,289, or a monthly rent of $3,357. So we have a couple of different options, not to be confusing, but it boils down to if we wanted to rent the main floor, there's a cost associated with getting that rentable. That main floor cost is about $120,000. The fair market rent for just the main floor would be about $23,886 a year.
If we did the entire first and second floor, the cost to bring that to a rentable stage is about $155,000 and would create, according to the estimate, about $40,289 a year in rent. And then obviously, depending on what course of action the commissioners take and what kind of bids come in, then we would either need or not need council approval for the term or the annual rent.
The other thing, originally, we were going to lease this out as is. And both of the appraisers felt that we would have a better opportunity if we made it move-in ready, and that's why we asked for some estimates. Daniel also has his own estimates, and I don't know if you have those right now that you want to share?
Not exactly, but I
Okay.
can estimate.
Yeah.
So we got construction estimates for making it a workable, rentable office. For instance, a kitchenette was recommended, a basic washroom was recommended to get those things, and of course, air conditioning, which is the biggest thing that building doesn't have right now. And then paint, and that's painting of the walls to make them
Right.
basically repairable. And that does come out in the direction of that 120,000.
Is the air conditioning included in these budgets?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe it's heating and air.
Yes.
correct? Not just air.
Right. We have heating right now, and in fact, both of the folks that we've looked at, we've got one price, another where we're waiting on a price. Both have said you can go either way. We can either probably realize some operational efficiencies by getting a system that will do both, or we can save money on the upfront cost, just putting air conditioning and have the heat still come from the boilers. So we'll make those judgments down the road. And the difference between the 120 and the 155 or so is bearing out pretty well between the first and second floor upfront costs, because we've got one price so far for both floors as that difference, $35,000.
And I'm hoping to meet with Stu Summers so we can approach the RDC at their June meeting and ask if we can borrow the money depending on if the council approves us going longer than a 3-year term and larger than a $25,000 lease payment. We'll either go for the $120,000 or the $155,000. We'll ask to borrow those funds. And once those funds have been repaid, we're hoping to create a non-reverting fund where these lease payments will go into the non-reverting fund such that we can, in perpetuity, keep up that building, because that really is a great facility, and we want to make sure that we have a mechanism where we're not falling behind on the maintenance in that building.
Well, for our guests that are here in the audience, is that it give you just a very brief history. That used to be our county jail. We moved out of it, I think, 1973, 74, to 157 Franklin, which is now our 911 center. But the building, for a period of time, housed the museum operation. They have since moved out of it.
It's been vacant a little over 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
So from my standpoint, here's the way I'm looking at it. We moved out of that building in the early 1970s. We have not made a dime on that building since its construction, although it sits in one of the primest locations in the city of Valparaiso. And if we want to keep the building, it needs to be, fixed, renovated. And I think it's smart to be able to do that if we can help somebody else help us do that without using all of our own money. And also retain the ownership of the building, because as time passes, the building and the property it sits on just becomes more and more valuable. So I think it's a wonderful project. I support it 100%. Otherwise, it just sits there, wasting away. So I don't know why anybody wouldn't support this.
So the timeline that we have for this particular project is today, we will vote to accept the 2 appraisals, and you have both of those. You should have both of those sheets in front of you. And if anybody has a preference as to which lease term although I think I would like the flexibility of either doing a 3-year or a 5-year, depending on how the council votes. This evening, we're going to ask the council if they have an appetite for extending the lease term and the lease amount over $25,000. At our June 12th meeting, we will announce the lease terms, and we will vote to renovate the sheriff's residence. And then at the June 27th RDC meeting, we will ask them to vote to lend the money for the renovation. And then at the July 11th meeting, we will vote to advertise the lease.
Okay.
And so today, the only thing we need to do is to accept the appraisals. And I don't know if we need to vote on that, Scott, or what we need to do.
I mean, it's in the sense of we're accepting the appraisals that have come in from the two appraisals, American Valuation and Valuation Services.
Yeah.
And then the document speaks for itself from that point, and then I think the executive can go to the fiscal tonight and get direction.
So we do or do not need to vote on this?
It's just a voting on the sense of accepting these documents as official documents, that's it.
Okay, I move to accept the quotes from the two valuation service companies.
We'll read both of those names into the...
Okay. That we accept the appraisal from Valuation Services Appraisal and Advisory out of Valparaiso, Indiana, and American Valuation Appraisal Services out of Cherville, Indiana.
We have a motion to accept the appraisal valuations from the two different agencies that were just read into the record. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Public Works Complex Project discussion. A and Z, could y'all come up front here? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
How are you all?
Wonderful.
Wonderful, good.
Sunny outside. My name is Jamal Anaptawi. I'm the co-owner of A&Z Engineering, and I have with me
I'm Russ Brown, Business Development Manager.
Andrew Waugh with Martin Riley Architects Engineers.
So early this year, we received a proposal from the commissioners to investigate or do a study for the 4 sites for the highway department. We started this study based on meetings with the staff, visiting the sites, observing our, we noticed a lot of deficiencies in those buildings, and we presented those in our study, and now we would like to share those information with the commissioners and the public, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Proceed.
Go ahead, Andrew.
All right. The kind of the short synopsis of the study was for the main Valpo site, just due to the age, size, conditions of the existing buildings, we didn't feel that new additions or renovations would be the best solution there, and that removing the existing buildings in phases would allow for the county to utilize that site without having to procure additional land or anything, and stay operational while construction would be going on to replace those buildings, and that would occur in a couple phases. As for the Chesterton and Hebron facilities, for the most part, those were in reasonable conditions. There's some possible locker room additions that could be used at those sites, and also cold storage facilities for equipment storage to get that out of the weather.
before you go to that, the way we approach this study is basically the best people to tell us what needed done instead of what wanted done is your employees. So we met with key staff members. We did a study with 7 options. After several meetings, let's compromise on which one is the best option. So with the help of your staff and the way this making the Valpo office or the site is the central location of the highway department and works together with the others, and how we make all of that operational with the mobilities, with storage and all that. So that's how we concluded to one final option, and that is preferred by most of the employees.
Early on, you know, there was some discussion I had with our superintendent about what we needed in as far as space. I'm talking about the actual footprint of the property, and I think Mr. Polaric stated that something around 12 to 14 to 15 acres, and you all come in and decided and, you know, advised us that, look, you can make this work if you move some stuff around.
Yes.
You won't have to go out and go to the expense of buying additional property to do that.
Exactly.
What are you recommending? How did you come to that conclusion, and what needs to be done in order for that particular footprint to work that it's sitting on now?
Well, with our observation as engineer, architects, and refer to your employees is basically, can we do this project with the existing ground? Or do we need to find another place and locate all that? Working as a team here, and by the way, A&Z and Martin Raleigh have been working together for the past 20 years, so it's not, this is our first project together. So the recommendation is keep it the same way and see what happens. How about revamping the whole buildings and see where that takes us? But the more we dug into it, seeing structures that the integrity of the structure is basically gone. Slab for the garages are lowered 3 feet. And so the building is not safe. And we notice, okay, we tackle it by the office first, then the garage, then the maintenance, the shops, and from all of that, we develop bullet points. And if Andrew.
Sure. So it's, I mean, if you're wanting us to go through kind of the list of the deficiencies, I can, it's
Well-
a bit lengthy.
Well, just
Let us
keep in
know
mind,
when
we
you
don't
want.
want to be here till midnight.
I mean, to some degree, with the various iteration, I mean, I think with what you're, just to elaborate on what Jamal said for your question, I mean, aside from just the 7 kind of iterations that we discussed further as a group, we did over double that internally in our office. And at first, I mean, we sort of were under the impression just that we were somewhat thinking that it was going to take more land and to make this all work. And then once we started kind of assigning square footages to different office spaces, taking into account the number of trucks, factoring in for some growth that Jim had indicated over the next decade or more, it just all started to fit as on the site, and especially once you took into account the state of the buildings and just the functional deficiencies for modern equipment. I mean, trucks in general and equipment have just gotten larger over the years, and that there's a lot of aspects of those buildings that it would take major renovations, I mean, removing roofs and things like that, and that doesn't take into account some of the other structural issues and deficiencies of the buildings that are also a matter of issue that ultimately, with a somewhat of a clean slate, you can make do. It's,
Was it, in your opinion, any of those buildings out there salvageable?
in the long term, no. They're,
Those
the
buildings
short answer is
are
no.
50 years and older, so your typical structure lasts 50 years anyway, then they lose their integrity. And those buildings are 53, 60 years old. So
Oh, could you speak briefly on what structurally you have found with these buildings that are unsafe?
Sure.
I think going through the pictures.
Yeah, we'll just go through the pictures real quick. If you could go back one slide, I think I'm just going to stop me if you want, otherwise I'm just going to kind of roll right through these. This was starting in the vestibule in between the office and the garage. We have water damage around the windows. There's condensation issues to the point where the floor diffusers won't even fit in the holes. Next slide. We also have concrete spalling at the main entry door. It's causing floor damage. There's also floor damage into the conference room, which is on the right-hand side of the photo. Next slide.
Hold on just a second.
Sure.
That floor damage in the, if you go back one, that reddish color that I see on the tile, what is that caused by?
Moisture.
Moisture from some sort of a source. I'm not
Coming in from somewhere?
somewhere.
Okay.
I mean, it could have been a roof leak. I mean, there's a basement under this portion of the building, I believe, so we wouldn't expect it to migrate from below. So more than likely
Okay.
overhead
All
water.
right, thank you.
There's, just for standards for the photo on the left is one of the restrooms. There's been plumbing leaks that have been repaired previously for that. By today's standards, it does not meet ADA requirements. This photo on the right, the copy room used to be a janitor's closet. This is a mop sink that is still in there. Next slide. We have shelving and copy supplies in front of electrical panels, which would be a code issue. Low voltage wiring on the right. It's been updated just as technology's improved, but it's still outdated by today's standards. Next slide. Just more in the conference room on the left. Just kind of a lack of space on the right. This was showing, this is one of the egress doors. You can kind of see a piece of insulation tucked behind a cabinet there that at one time has been used to put over the door to help control air leaks and problems associated with.
So there's a door behind that piece of insulation?
The doors on the left, the piece of insulation's tucked on the right for
Behind the
moving
file
over to
cabinet.
put in front of the door to try to control air losses. Next slide.
Rusty pipes.
There's a lot of different improvements that have happened over the years, multiple different pipe systems. The one on the left is partially just, part of the building is in the basement is being used to store old courthouse records, which for storing records is in exactly the best place to do those for their longevity. The photo on the right is actually a small plumbing line that is running across the floor to get to a floor drain because the water softeners don't have a floor drain next to those, which actually crosses a path that gets used by staff. Next photo. There's condensation on ductwork that has kind of led to mildew and on insulation. The other shot's just another overall kind of the in the basement.
And if you notice also the height of the basement, that does not meet code these days?
Next photo, we have, yeah, here's, so
Low
on
plants.
the left-hand side, that is a pump, a cistern and a pump that's located in the break room for the employees at the highway department. On the right, that is, if you walk from upstairs to down, you have to go past that low clearance duct to get into their break room, which, if I remember correctly, it's under 7'6", which would typically be the code minimum. Next photo, or next slide. Moving to the outside, we have spalling bricks and structural damage to walls. Next slide. This is moving on to the garage part. There's broken glass block, some of which they've put rigid expandable foam to try to plug the holes. Next slide. On the left, you have, it's a little hard to see, but there's streaks on that masonry that is water
Leaks.
running down the interior wall from leaky windows above. On the right is what some of the electrical system looks like after being exposed to different contaminants. So that's completely rusted through at a few different points. Next slide. This is two different bathrooms in the garage portion. There's a lack of, well, the one on the left doesn't meet ADA. It's that's a unisex bathroom off an office. Since this facility was built, it was predominantly a male field. The Highway Department has several female employees that, including on the road crews and items, and there's only one larger restroom for all the employees to use in the garage, which is one of the photos on the right. Lack of storage, has cleaning supplies up on the shelf. Next slide. The photo on the left, still in that same bathroom. Water heater's just sitting next to the urinal. There's a duct that kind of runs through on the floor to get to the next adjacent room, and then there's some materials stored on top of that duct. It doesn't really, it's a little hard to tell in the photo, but if you're there in person, the photo on the right, there's, aside from just the staining, which happens in garages, but the floor slab is cracked, and due to the increasing sizes of equipment, the floor slab is a bit thin to accommodate some of the equipment weights.
That
So
wasn't
it's-
originally designed to take on this kind of weight.
Correct.
Yep.
Next slide. This is a trench drain that is in that same area. If you kind of look on either edge of that trench drain, that's actually pieces of metal that have rusted through and started to come off of that assembly, which actually could contribute further damage to tires and anything if it runs over it. Door on the right is a door that's been caulked shut to avoid air leakage. That was in an office in the maintenance, off the maintenance garage. Next slide.
You can't use
If
that
you could
door.
go back to that slide again. We got a caulk door.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, aren't we eliminating
It would,
exit points for that?
it would be an exit point, yes.
No
And
escape.
it's not ideal by any means.
Yeah.
So slide on the left, overhead doors are rusting. Slide on the right is above the overhead doors to the garage. That's there's extensive cracking in the masonry. In that particular picture, there's a displacement in that concrete masonry to the extent that actually hornets have moved in and living in the wall. Next slide. Similar, just adjacent to that, but a different section of wall. You can kind of see the foam where it's tried to plug the holes. Aside from just the horizontal joints, there's cracking up through, vertically through the blocks. On the right, the steel lintels that support the window openings, those are rusting and have been for a while, along with the masonry damage on above that. Next slide. One on the left is one of the exterior doors, a different than one. And this was actually a usable door, but entirely rusted on the surface. That soon will start to rust through. Photo on the right is the roof of the salt barn. Shingles are starting to curl. This spot actually has some where the stone granules have come off. They're kind of on the right where it's a little black and brown. And then aside from just the one shingle that's missing there was multiple others that were missing as well. Next slide.
Didn't they say the roof leaks also in that one?
There is some evidence of roof leakage. Photo on the left is of the wood deck in the salt barn. Towards the top, you can see some discoloration where water has been making it in, along with some other spots, and there's more. We just try to get a sampling of photos here. Salt is corrosive, doesn't play nice with the steel, so there's some rusting protection on the foundation and walls at the entrance of the salt barn. Next slide. One on the left, that is some of the sheathing. That is actually rotted away now, so that's a hole into the inside. One on the right, that is in what is termed the lower garage. It's one of the few areas that the Valpo location has to store trucks outside to get them out of the weather. This is the facility that at some point in time the floor had been lowered to be able to accommodate the larger vehicles. Pretty much every masonry pier in this portion of the building has showing signs of distress and cracking.
Yep.
Next slide.
That's not safe.
And also the one on the left is just at the lower entrance. Gravel kind of gets in there, and additional maintenance is needed to keep drainage clear. Photo on the right is a egress door that would have allowed people to get out of this lower garage at one point in time. It was blocked in when the floor was lowered because there's no way to get up to it. Essentially, for that lower garage, there is one man door to get out, and you have to go up a set of wood steps and a platform that don't meet code to get to that door. Next slide. There's a picture on the left, a picture of that platform and railing. On the right, you can see the condition of how the foundations of the building were left when that floor was lowered. At one time, that concrete, and if you can see the different color of the concrete to the left, the top line, more distinct line, would have been where that floor level at one time was. And that footer that has kind of the concrete footer has a little bit of a lip, that was poured when it was below grade, and is just sitting on top now. Next photo.
That's not
Or
safe
slide.
at all.
There's a steel column in the center of that lower garage. That is a picture of the lower part of it on the left.
What is that supporting?
The roof.
So, if somebody have an accident, hit that.
That's supporting the roof?
Yeah.
Yes, and it's pretty much rusted through once and was repaired, and now the repair is nearing completely rusted through as well. And the picture on the right is showing some of the cracks and displacement that have happened in the load-bearing masonry at the perimeter walls.
That looks like that cinder block has shifted.
It has.
Yep.
And has
Well,
been
that ain't good.
repaired. Next slide. The photo on the left is just one example of holes that are in the masonry, exterior load-bearing masonry walls. And on the photo on the right is more, another example from a different one of the buildings for masonry cracking. This is the one point of egress for staff to exit out of the sign shop. Next slide.
How do holes get poked in those walls?
Jim got mad and hit
Been here
the,
longer than I have. I'm sure somebody hit it with something once upon a time.
But aside from just kind of the integrity of the wall, it also lets water get in and further degrade that masonry over time. Pretty much every window location or door opening has cracking. The one on the left is just an example of the cracking at the windows. The one on the right, it was a door opening, and you can actually kind of see that shadow line underneath that there's lateral displacement where that wall's been moving and doesn't fully line up anymore.
So it's something shifting, either
Right.
lateral
exactly.
It's
or the
moving
wall.
sideways, yes. Next slide. This is, well, the one on the left is another man door for a building. The door frame is probably about the only thing holding those two concrete masonry blocks from falling out. The picture on the right is a set of steps for staff to use at the sign shop. It's pulling away from the wall. Next slide. These two pictures are just kind of examples of some of the equipment that is sitting outside due to the lack of storage in regard to cold storage space. So it's you can see the rust on it, and that equipment isn't cheap, and is the life expectancy decreases the more it sits out in the elements. Next slide.
Trucks the same way.
Yeah, same way for the trucks on the left. So far, everything we've discussed was for Valparaiso site. There's more. This was just a sampling of photos. The next few here are from Chesterton. This is where a fence is essentially, the posts have rusted through or been damaged. Pretty much, the Chesterton site there's an east and a west side. This is on the east side. Pretty much at least half the fence for the east side is in a similar condition. Next slide, please. This is the cold storage building that we indicated in the report that we recommend tearing down and building a larger storage building.
What side is this on?
This is on the east side as well,
On Chesterton?
at
Yeah.
Chesterton.
Are we, what's in those buildings?
It's where we store as much equipment as we can in the wintertime to get it out of the weather,
Okay,
and signs and barricades and stuff.
okay.
So, the man doors on this building, the building is shifted / doors rusted to the point they don't work. You actually have to raise the overhead doors to get in. Next slide,
Oh,
please.
you can't walk through the man doors?
No.
The picture on the left is a close-up of what the condition of the siding for that building, especially at the corner. So it's not watertight or weather-tight by any means. And there's similar damage around the perimeter of that building. Next slide, please. Basically, one on the left was just the example that there used to be another building there. There's an old foundation that need to be removed to accommodate fully using the site for storage of aggregates or for rebuilding the building. One on the right is just to reiterate that even though the Valpo site doesn't have room for the trucks or equipment, that Chesterton and Hebron both have equipment that does set outside as
Sit
well.
outside as well?
Yeah.
Next slide. We had a couple iterations in the report just as possibilities on how the site could be used. This is the Valparaiso site, and we whittled down from 20-some iterations to the two that we went over with staff at the Highway Department, that this is how you could locate with their needs that were indicated to us and how it could actually work on the site. Along the south side is barriers that help contain some of the aggregate storage, get those out of the main view from Indiana 2, but also with those barriers, you can kind of condense and use the site. That's one of the main ways that we were able to make that a functional site. And then we have truck storage, which is kind of the angle parking. Then the lighter colored block there is staff parking with offices to the east, and then maintenance and function, garage bays, a fabrication area, and then parts storage, and then there's a wash bay and some parking for the weights and measures, and then up basically where the existing office and garage would be would after the rest of it would be built, cold storage to get more of that equipment.
We also discussed about placing weights and measures department out there. So
Right. This, I believe they're currently in this building. This would, this iteration accommodates a slight increase in space. It increases it, it provides space for them in the office area, and a small increase in square footage for their office space in this layout, as well as accommodates their truck parking, which is in the garage at this site, and also their trailer parking that they park at the Highway Department now out in the elements.
And the new construction could happen while the operational.
So we could renovate, even though we're not, on this property and operate at the same time.
I wouldn't say renovate.
Renovate.
You could
Reconstruct.
reconstruct.
Yeah, reconstruct.
Yes. Essentially, it would have to be phased. For this layout, the salt barn, the lower garage, and the sign shop would all need to come down at the beginning. At the very, kind of along the southern property line there in the center, there's a new salt barn, which depending on time of year and time frame of how things start, could be built to make sure that there's still salt capacity without having to go to one of the other sites to load trucks. And then all of that lower chunk of space could be built and become operational, and then the existing office and garage could be taken down to build the cold storage facility.
Andrew and Jamal and Jim, when people think of the word garage, they typically think of their two-car garage connected to their house where they park their vehicles. And I think it's almost a disservice to be calling our public works facility complex a garage, because we have many more than one building, and we have a lot more functions than storing equipment, and we're not even doing a good job of storing our vehicles inside of our buildings right now. And I'm just wondering if we could talk about all of the different, how many different buildings do we have in our public works complex, and how many different functions are we actually performing out of those facilities? And I don't know, Jim, do you want to take a stab at that? But you're going to have to come over to a microphone to talk. Talk to Ed in that microphone, yeah.
Yeah, right now, we have the three facilities, the Valparaiso, the Chesterton, and the Hebron, and there's also the South Haven, so there's actually four. The South Haven one is newer. It was just opened up 2 years ago, I believe. And there's plenty of storage room in that, and it's a brand-new facility, so it meets all the requirements and everything like that. As they showed in the Chesterton one, on the east side, that is an old building from probably in the 50s, before they built the new building across the street, and 12 or 16 years ago, I think that one was built.
Yeah.
But the foundation they showed was where the existing building was torn down, yet they left up that other one. So as you can see there, a lot of equipment sits outside. In Hebron, a majority of the equipment sits outside, from the road grader to the excavator.
Could you estimate the total value of equipment that is
30
sitting?
million.
30
By the
million?
time you probably figure trucks, excavators, and snow plows and everything, I would guess somewhere between 25 and 30 million. We just ordered the new trucks, and those new trucks were 300,000 apiece with the snow plows.
And currently, those are sitting outside 365 days.
In Valpo, yes.
Yes.
Chesterton and Hebron, they can park inside. Like later in on the agenda, we'll come to you because the payloader we have in Valpo is only 9 years old and there's holes rusted in the floor because it sits outside. So we gotta,
Not only does it sit outside, you don't have any type of
yeah, there's nowhere to
building
wash it.
to wash into. You don't have any kind of bay.
No, not without, the only way you'd wash it is to kick the mechanics out of their shop so you could wash trucks.
So can you just talk about all the different functions that your department actually is responsible for?
Everything from about 10 foot off each, that side of the road to 10 foot off that side of the road, and pretty much all the infrastructure that falls within the right of way.
And you
So,
also
yeah.
are responsible for maintenance and having mechanics and maintaining all of
Correct,
that?
yeah, right
equipment?
now, our mechanics are all split up. We have mechanics at 2 locations, one in Hebron and then one in Valpo with the mechanics assistant. So we have to maintain inventory at multiple locations, equipment for them to repair the vehicles at multiple locations. And as you can see in the Valpo shop, we can't even lift a vehicle off the ground other than with a floor jack. So any work that's really done they got to lay on their backs and roll underneath it.
And you also do some sign fabrication?
Sign fabrication, yeah, the sign shop, there were no pictures of the sign shop, but yes, you had external pictures of the sign shop, and that is where also the lower garage is. So with this newer facility, all that can be done under one roof. Like right now, if we need to talk with somebody in the sign shop, we gotta walk across, through the parking lot, depending on when it is, and go out into the sign shop to where the new layout, we'd be able to walk out of the office, walk through the building and get to them. Everybody would be within one floor print.
So talk about everything that you do with our, how many miles of roads do we have? And tell us everything that you're responsible for maintaining
Yeah,
on those roads.
just under 800 miles of road, 200 subdivisions. Out of that 800 miles, we got about 300 miles of chip seal and 500 miles of asphalt. And then multiple thousands of culverts. And all the ditches along the side of those roads that we have to maintain, along with mowing those roads and cutting the trees back along the edge of the roads and maintaining all the signs on the roads, which we have a part-timer this year that is out inventorying signs. And I mean, we would estimate it probably 20 to 30,000 signs out there that we have in an inventory that we need to keep track of.
Oh, at least.
So you have to pave or chip seal the roads, you have to plow the roads when there's snow, and
Plow
well,
roads, chip seal roads.
We
everything.
don't pave.
fix,
We don't pave.
No, we do not do our own, well, we do some small stuff, like if we change a culvert and we need to come in and fix a piece of the road, we will come in and we lay that we do it by hand. If it's larger pieces, then that is contracted out, correct.
but you're still responsible for it.
Right, we're still responsible for it. Like, we had to change, one of our rollers was sitting in the Chesterton shop over the winter, came down here, the seat was bad in it, some switches and electricals, we had to put a new seat in it. Well, it sat outside and the raccoons ripped a hole in the brand-new seat. So, we got a brand-new $800 seat with duct tape on it already.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I mean, it's clear. I mean, if you're familiar with the buildings that our entire inventory, that this is, in my opinion, for what it's worth, it is far and away the worst building in our inventory, far and away. The jail is probably second, but it's more of a, there's less of a concern of a structural issue there is, it's just some components of it wearing out that need to be replaced. But this building here, I mean, you don't need a 4-year degree as an architect to determine this building's unsafe to operate in. You have egress doors that we saw sealed up, you can't even get through. And they're in rooms where they're working around gasoline and diesel. And if something were to happen, to get out of that building in time, you literally have to go up a set of stairs and get out that way. That can't go on. We have shifting cinder block walls. that, you know, who knows how long that could last. It could go down tonight. I mean, it's just, we have people working and going in and out of those buildings constantly. Thank goodness we don't have any public that comes in and out of them, but our workers, we're just as responsible for them, and they deserve a safe place, if nothing else, a safe place to work out of. And then we had the issue of millions and millions of dollars invested in equipment that we are abusing because we can't get it out of the weather and clean it, and so it holds its value and its use longer. And that, at the end of the day, is just costing us more money. But we need to do something. We needed to make a decision on this, and that's what I plan on this board providing this information to the county council, so a decision, we can start moving on a decision here. Because it can't, I mean, quite honestly, if you look through this property, a decision on this property should have been made a decade ago. A decade. Easily a decade ago. And now it's accelerating in its deterioration to, I mean, like I said, you don't have to be an architect to see, you have shifting cinder block, you have window and door frames that you probably stick a screwdriver through. So we need to do something much sooner rather than later, and that is the intent here, so.
Did you want any board action today?
No, I don't think, Scott, we don't need any board action, do we?
No, this was just a presentation.
Are we gonna talk about the cost estimates of this? That's a lot of money,
Yes.
what we're proposing here.
Yes, it is a lot of money. What is your cost estimate? And I want everybody to understand that when, you know, this stuff is bid out, I mean, it's really just a guess as to what it may cost. It could be way less, could be a little more.
Yes.
But you build in, you always want to shoot, you don't want to guess something out that ends up being a lot more than what you thought it would be.
No, we were conservative in our estimate.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the other thing is it hasn't been designed yet, so we wanted to make
Right.
sure that we,
And we're not going to know anything until it's designed. And then that design is bid out to be built.
And in our engineer's estimate, we're at least 20% contingency.
Okay.
Because you haven't done anything yet, so
Right.
even the state allows you to have that. The estimate, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
The estimate is $23,675,000
And that's for all three properties?
for all three,
Okay.
and engineering fee as well.
And engineering fee as
Architects and engineers.
In the soft costs for like office equipment, is that in there as well?
I believe we included
Yeah,
a little bit of
there's-
furniture, but,
Yes,
There's not much furniture needed, but,
right.
but it's in there, included in the estimate.
you know, my goal is to, you know, we're looking at a bond that we're looking to retire at the end of the year. And for us to take advantage of that current tax rate, you know, so it doesn't negatively affect our current tax rate by forcing it to go up. If we have to have another project or projects plugged in at the time that expires, or we lose it. And anything over, what is it, 12 or 14 million, Scott, that has to go out to referendum at that point.
It's an equation, I think somewhere right now, it's 16 or 16.5 million, depending on what we're doing exactly.
And we have, I think our last projection was within Skillman study, there was it, Scott, was it 25 million worth of work that needs to be done in the jail? My hope is, and I've asked Scott to give me a list of those issues in the jail that he would deem critical, that we address sooner rather than later. That price tag is right around 8 million. My hope is I'm gonna work with him, and I'm gonna work with you, and try to get this, both of these projects into a program where we can address both of them with this single bond.
Yep.
So that's going to, that's going to take some sacrifice on Jim's part. You may as well start looking at it now as to what we can do without right now and maybe address in a year or 2 years to put on there. But let's tackle the lion's share of it. And we're going to do the same thing with the jail. And then, and then put it in front of the council for a vote.
I think we have a lot of work to do to get to just one bond because we got the jail estimates back and those were 29 million. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
cutting a lot.
Yeah, I agree, but I am not going to suggest in this economic environment that the county takes on a second bond because that will cause an increase in the tax rate. And that's the last thing I think the county should be doing right now to the taxpayers. And I will not support that. Not that I have to, that's a council decision, commissioners don't raise taxes. But I'm not going to put forth a project that is going to cause that chain reaction. I'm going to put together a project or projects that I believe that we, within our current financial means, that we can take on without affecting the tax rate. That is my goal. Any other comment? Well, thank you very much. You should make everybody, you're not being paid to be here, so thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all the
I appreciate
extra
that.
effort that you've put in. We really appreciate
Quite
it.
welcome.
We do pay them.
But we didn't pay them
We didn't
to
pay them
be
to be
here
here.
today. None of this presentation was in their initial proposal.
The Rizzo Law Group, Scott?
So we have a situation in which our probation department is the keeper of obviously many records. It's kind of a unique, weird situation in which there is a federal murder trial occurring in the state of Pennsylvania in which for some reason they believe they need some of our confidential probation Project Pro records. Anyone that understands what Project Pro is would understand the sensitivity of that information. However, our probation department was served a federal subpoena under the laws of that circuit and in that state. And obviously that doesn't jive with our privacy laws and things of that nature. So this is to hire an attorney that's located in Pittsburgh that does this type of work to be able to defend and make sure that whatever we do turn over for that federal murder trial is not causing us any problems with our confidentiality issues. And very specifically, there's not just the offender's information, but potentially one, if not several, victims' identities, et cetera, that would be potentially in this information. So that's why I took it a little bit more critically than some other things. So what this is to a representation and fee agreement for this law group to defend and make sure that what we do turn over is what we're required to turn over, and that we don't run afoul of any of our local, state of Indiana confidentiality rules.
You need to do,
I need a motion in a second.
Motion to approve.
And second.
you have a motion to approve the contract with the Rizzo Law Group, a fee agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Health Department, Sheila Paul. We have an ordinance creating a non-reverting fund, number 8195, for receipt of funds from the Indiana Department of Health for the land grant fund, second reading.
Yeah.
Lead grant fund. You can see I need new glasses.
Me too.
Has anything changed since first reading?
No, nothing.
Motion to approve on second reading.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Thank you.
Are we going to have her in front of us to talk about Senate Bill 4? sometime soon, because that's kind of a big deal.
We were thinking in the July timeframe. We've got a pretty aggressive agenda between now and the end of June, so hopefully sometime in July.
When's the deadline for?
September
opt-in?
1st.
September 1st.
I'm actually looking forward to that.
Great.
I had a lot of questions.
Good.
Well, maybe we
It's
should
kind of
do
a
it
big deal.
sooner.
I'm sure everybody would agree. It's kind of a big deal.
It is absolutely a big deal.
I just want to make sure that there's room on the agenda to give it the appropriate amount of time to discuss, and it's not, you're not pushed out of here because we got 20 things behind you, so.
Sure, I
agree.
would say the sooner we could discuss it, the better, because then if you have questions, I can then take them back and get answers from our board or from the
How often
state.
does your board meet, monthly or?
They meet the first Tuesday of every month.
Yeah, the sooner we can get it on.
Yeah, let's,
I'll show you what we have on the agenda, and if you want to, we have a lot on.
Well,
We have the
we'll-
opioid presentations, we've got the Public Safety Commission, we've got a
This
number of
is
different things.
How many millions of dollars that we're talking about?
For the first year, potentially around 2, and for the second year, 4.
I think.
Compared
we
to
need make sure we give it
135,000.
the time it deserves.
Well, we'll take a look at it, and if we can get you in earlier.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I have a lot of questions, so.
Sure,
Okay.
okay. And if you have questions in the meantime, I mean, that you'd
I'd
like
rather
to
have you
send
in
me.
front of me when I ask them.
No
Okay.
problem. All right, sounds good.
Thank you. Parks Department, Jake
Yeah, we did.
McAvoy and
Dave Hollenbeck.
Dave Hollenbeck. We have an ordinance creating a non-reverting fund, number 8166, for receipt of proceeds from the Lake Michigan Coastal Program in the amount of $36,250, second reading.
Motion to approve on second reading?
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. And then we have a request to sell Pine Township property.
I will have a few comments with regard to that, and then I've got 2 board members still with me. I lost one here this morning, and 2 were not able to be here because of job commitments. But Tony is here and Carl is here. And you know Jake. What we're here to is to share with you a vision we have that emanates from the master planning process that we've done on a regular basis, and we are about engaged in that process again. And that involves what we call the Pine Township property. It has an interesting history. We acquired it in 2006 from the state of Indiana, who had used it for many years to have inmates from the Michigan City Penitentiary grow vegetables on the property. It's about 60 acres of ground. Then those vegetables were used to feed inmates throughout the state of Indiana. For whatever reason, it was decided that that was no longer the best way to get vegetables for the prisoners. So that process was abandoned, and the state contacted the county in 2006 and asked whether it was a piece of property that we might be interested in. We decided that there was enough interest in it that we did go ahead and purchase the property from the state. That's where the story changes a little bit, because like I've said, we've been through a number of master planning processes, and this property has just not surfaced in that planning process as a viable alternative of any kind. And in the interim, of course, we've acquired the South County property and Brookdale on the north, and then we're trying to do what we need to do with Sunset Hill Farm Park. So this property effectively slid down to about number 4 or 5 on the priority list. And as we've gone through the planning process this time, it's dawned on us that there may well be better use of that asset by converting it into cash and spending that money on park-related functions. And what we've done is put a little list together of our ideas as a park department, what might be good usage for this money. I've also got a plat of the property itself. It's right on the county line. In fact, the eastern boundary of this property is County Line Road.
Now, assuming this 400,000 is what you're projecting the property's worth.
That is an estimate. It is an estimate that we obtained through an appraisal of the
Okay.
property, but it is not set in stone. We don't know. The market will decide, obviously, what it's worth.
Probably more than that, given the market.
I like the way you think. The reason we're here is because the title to the property was taken in the name of the County of Porter on the deed, which means that the county commissioners have to execute a deed of conveyance if we're in fact going to be able to transfer it to whoever purchases the property. As you'll see on the plat, it's got a significant stormwater drain that goes through the property, which makes it even more problematic for any park-related usage. State Board of Accounts is of the opinion that when you sell a piece of property that you paid for, the proceeds have to go back into the same fund in which they came out of, which in '06 was a local option income tax. So it'll have, the proceeds will have to go back into that fund, which then brings the county council to play, because the county council then, and we'll be asking the county council, if you say okay, and we sell the property and we get the proceeds, we certainly need and would like that money to come back into park-related activities as that list shows. So we're here today to answer any questions you may have about it. We don't need any action as such, and as long as we get a consensus opinion that this is a good idea, and what we're doing, of course, is taking an underused asset and turning it into an asset we could really use, money, to do things at Sunset Hill Farm Park and the two other properties.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. I think, anytime government is, pays for something that it was obviously, I don't know what we originally paid for that.
A little over, it's almost doubled in price.
Yeah.
A little over $200,000.
And we're not using it, it's just a waste of tax dollars. So-
And Dave, you and I had talked about possibly exchanging this property for another property that might be more suitable for do you want to just talk about that? And
Well, there are some tax advantages that can ensue, and I don't profess to be a tax lawyer, all right? But there are some tax advantages that can benefit the purchaser of the property and might get us a better transactional deal out of it if we did and it's the
1031?
IRS code number.
1031 or 1035?
1041 swap or
Yeah, yeah.
transfer, whatever that is. And yes, Barb, you brought that to my attention, and we're looking into that. We can promote that as part of why someone might be interested in it. Candidly, it's probably farmland at this point, and maybe that's about the best and highest use of the property right now. But like I said, the market will decide, and we'll let the word out, and we'll see who jumps at it. But we're here today again to answer any questions you may have and hopefully get a positive read on the commissioners as to your willingness to convey the property. There are a bunch of hoops. You were talking with Scott about the hoops you have to jump through to lease a piece of property.
It's gonna look like, it's gonna sound familiar, let's
Right,
put it that way.
there are hoops we have to jump through to sell a piece of property that is owned by the county, and we'll have to do that, and once we do that, we'll be back, if you say go forward today, we'll be back with the results of that process with a recommendation that you convey the property to whoever we deem to be the best candidate, which will probably be who pays the most money for the property. Answer any questions you may have.
I think it's a great idea. I don't have any problem.
I'm glad you're doing this, I think. We talked about it a long time ago, and at that time, the board was not in favor, so I'm glad that things have changed.
Scott,
Oh,
does Does this
ahead, I'm sorry.
require a motion of approval?
As far as I'm concerned, and you can listen to Scott, obviously, but what we're here today for, we obviously have to go through the process of selling it. So I don't have a deed for you to execute, but if you have, it sounds like to me that there's a consensus that we should proceed and go forward. Scott, what do you think?
I don't think we need an official vote because frankly, the council is probably the one that's gonna have to give them the approval to go get the appraisals, to then pick a process to get it sold. But I think maybe what the council would be looking for, maybe what the park board is looking for is a motion that would show that the commissioners are in support of continuing down this path at this point in time.
Could that also make a difference to a potential buyer?
Yes.
Because we won't mess up the sale in the middle of it.
It's always nice when we're selling things to know that there's not any political fighting happening around the sale of the property. It gives the indication that we're going to proceed with a fairly smooth transaction as can be done through the statutes.
I'll make a motion to go ahead with the sale. To support the sale.
I second the motion.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the sale, and thanks you for the free legal advice. Appreciate that.
Legal advice is worth about what you pay for.
It's not free.
He's charging somebody, just not us.
All right. We got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved.
We will proceed accordingly, and thank you for your willingness to support our idea.
Yeah.
The last thing that the Park Department has on the agenda, I'm going to defer to our superintendent, Jake, who wants to talk to you about naming rights.
All righty. So the park board recently has been working on and approved a naming rights policy for Porter County Parks Department. And what that policy sort of allows us to do is to seek additional donors or sponsors, community partners, via an additional avenue of naming of various either park facilities or amenities, or in certain cases when we go to develop or build a park, certain naming rights to the park itself. So this was passed, I think, at a couple meetings ago. They're still going through some details and working on it, but in the gist of it, it is going to open up more doors for some bigger type of donations, some sponsors, community partners, and even some business owners who may want to sponsor larger projects within the park department, fields, facilities, or in general, entire park development as we're currently pursuing. And the big driving force to move this through was we are running now headlong into attempting to fundraise for Phase 1 of Akiki in the South County. We as a park department and as a park board have decided to make this a top priority. It is on our master plan. It is a top priority in the master plan. And we're
Want to mention where this is, Jake?
Yeah, so this is Akiki Park. So if you look, that parking lot runs along 49. So where that little cutout is south, and that is going towards Couts. So it is right on the outskirts of the town of Couts.
Pleasant Township.
And then, so this is a property we've had for a long time, that there's unfortunately hasn't been a whole lot of movement on. So we are
And it's how many acres?
63 and a half acres. And then right now, it is currently used for farming, so it's an ag field at the moment, which provides no recreational use for the people or the residents of that area.
And can I ask you, do we have any parks south of 30 right now?
Down on the river.
We have Dunn's Bridge, which is a bridge. It's exactly that. Yeah, so it doesn't offer a whole lot of recreational services. It's a small parcel of land, so it doesn't have the capacity to serve enough people.
It basically is used by people with canoes who want to access the Kankakee.
Yeah.
And how long have we owned the 63 acres?
I think we've had it since 2014, if I remember correctly. So we've had it for almost a decade now.
And one of the reasons I asked Jake to come today is because the commissioners know people, and we know how to twist arms, and so I was suggesting that we might want to help and assist the Parks Board in finding very generous donors who would like to associate their name with a portion or the entire park in this case.
But we won't be twisting arms. We're not supposed to do that.
All right, all right. Noted.
We start with you three, is that what?
My only question about this, is that, and what we're talking about here is trying to take advantage of some of the amenities we own and to generate some revenue by selling the naming rights to those individual properties. That it's done with good taste,
Yeah, any,
and that we have some parameters on what, you know, I hate to drive by Akiki Park and it's Bud's Bill Bonds.
yeah, so any naming right or approval would have to go through the park board.
Have you given them the policy? Have you seen the policy?
No, I have not seen it.
I will,
Get you that.
yeah, I will send you a copy of it. Yeah, so there are, anything would have to be still approved by the park board, so it'll make sure everything is of good taste. Yeah, like, for the same very reasons we don't want.
Does it include like specific fields
Yeah.
within a park?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is verbiage in there that if somebody wants to say name like a softball field, or they want to, one of our parks that would have the capacity to handle a softball field or a soccer field, if somebody wanted to name one, they would have the ability to propose that to the board and be part of that process. And maybe name one of the baseball fields or a softball field or a soccer field.
And Jake, do you want to just talk about the cost of just Phase 1 for
Yeah.
Akiki Park and the reason why we felt it was important to come up with a naming's right policy so that we could get this launched so we don't go another 10 years without it sitting as
Yeah.
farmland?
Yeah, absolutely. So the price tag it's an estimate. We're working off an old number adjusted for inflation. So Phase 1 on that first picture is just the groundwork. So that's the infrastructure, that's the stormwater drainage, that's the drainage, any electrical utilities that's got to go in. That's the grass, the trees, the native plantings, the wetlands, the ponds, and the parking lot, and then road access off of 49. And the rough estimate right now is about $3 million to get that much done. So which is why we needed to find creative ways to try to pursue those monies, because it's a lofty price tag.
Did you say drainage?
Yeah. Yep, so the Phase 1 would allow us to set up the complete rest of the build, but we've got to get Phase 1 before we can move anything else.
Do you want to also talk about how Akiki Park got its name?
Yeah, so it was actually, the grade schools at the time, they did a naming contest, and students submitted essays, and one of the essays had the title Akiki Park, and then that was picked as the winner back in, I think 2017, I think is when that contest happened. So that is where the original name came from, and we do think it's important to honor that name, so Akiki will be a part of the name, no matter how the rest of it takes place. But that was the original concept, and we feel it's important that we keep that community connection and that community engagement throughout this entire process.
It does have some historical precedent. It was a Native American name of a group that was in that area.
Yep.
And as we move forward, I think it's important to keep the local neighbors, especially those that are right there, informed and
Yep.
let them know what we're doing. 'Cause
Yeah.
I know there were some rather intense concerns when we bought the property.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to, work with the local people down there, the community down there, and make sure they're all
Keep them in the loop.
in loop, yeah.
And the only thing that's really been approved is Phase 1.
Yeah,
The only
right.
thing that's really been approved by the fire board is
Should we go back? That
Yeah,
picture?
so the previous one is Phase 1, so this is the one we're working for now. We've kind of removed all the structures, the facilities, the fields, and the plan is to get it to where it's flat grass and paved ADA accessible trails and parking. That way we can open that park up for use so people can get out there and start using that park.
And just as with this initial Phase 1, what will people be able to enjoy at the park?
Yeah, so that one, so these, they're not quite all on there because we don't quite have the software to draw a park anymore. There will be 4-foot wide ADA paved trails, several loops throughout there, varying in range from a half a mile to a mile. There will be the detention ponds, those ponds there, those will be fishable ponds, and then as well as the parking, and then everything else will be, for the first part of Phase 1, flat grass. So those, if you did want to go out there and play soccer, or if you wanted to have a soccer tournament, or if the schools wanted to go out there and use it, or if you wanted to do, host an event out there, you would have the space to do it, along with the trails and some passive recreation opportunities.
So, what do you need exactly
Sounds like
from?
Barb and Jake need to have some more discussions and put together a game plan as to how we go about doing. Phase 1 is probably the most difficult one to deal with naming rights because it's underground stuff and at-ground stuff.
Yep, and once we get Phase 1 underway and completed, ultimately, we can use that momentum to then drive the rest of what we need to do out there. But getting that first step is going to be the hardest, but I think we can do it.
Yeah, I
And
think
Jake will get you the naming rights policy and
and I'll send that.
obviously ask us any questions you may have.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We think it's a great project.
Thank you. I'm excited about it.
That's a great picture.
Yeah, and then that last one was one of the original renderings.
Okay, Auditor Karen Martin, we have an employee request for 2 additional days of bereavement for the passing of their father.
The handbook specifically states I need to come before the commissioners for that.
Okay. Any comment from the board?
I move to approve the 2 additional days of bereavement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Dawson Consulting LLC, an agreement to provide professional consulting services for 3 years not to exceed $33,000.
Initially, we've been doing a year-to-year. I'd like to take this 3 years because we're going to be saving some money by doing it 3 years instead of 1 per year.
And what consulting services do they provide?
Dawson does our consulting services for getting money back from the 4D program, which would mean anybody that assists in processing, whether it be the clerk, the prosecutor, myself, but we primarily do the claims, as well as it covers the locations, lighting. It goes through all the buildings, and he does a complete look at what's being used for the 4D program so we can get reimbursed by the state.
Oh, okay.
The state and the federal government reimburse us about 66% of the cost to enforce the 4D child support prosecutor. The only way to gather all of the expenses, as Karen was laying out, whether it's postage or, somebody's clerk's time for 5 hours once a month, this company comes in and attempts to get that all in one place so that we maximize our reimbursement.
Okay.
I move to approve the DASA consulting agreement for professional consulting services for 3 years not to exceed $33,000.
Second.
We have a motion and a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. We have a SRI Inc., a tax sales support service agreement.
Okay, they're increasing their fees for sales of tax sales. The situation is though we do not get the fees increased to us. It's the end user that purchases or reimburses the individual that buys the property that pays that fee. We do not pay it. But they wanted to make you aware of it because it is a contract.
Motion to approve.
I second.
There's a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Expo Center, Lori's not able to be here, but we have F.E. Moran, Inc., a contract for annual sprinkler inspections in the amount of $2,560.
I move to approve that contract for annual sprinkler inspections with F.E. Moran Incorporated in the amount of $2,560.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. We have an agreement here with Communication Company, agreement for annual fire alarm inspection in the amount of $4,002.
Do we know the company?
Communication Company. That's
So
all
moved.
that's all I have.
That's the name of the company, okay. I move that we approve the agreement with Communication Company for the annual fire alarm inspections in the amount of $4,002.
I already moved, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
We have, you'll
I'll second it then.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. IT Department, Lee Childers, Director. Just click along and we, yeah. NITCO request to renew a contract for internet service at the Chesterton Highway Garage for 36 months with a total monthly amount of $119.90. Did I read that correctly?
That's correct.
Motion to approve.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved.
Just a quick update for the Board of Commissioners.
Very quick.
I've been in community, you'll be interested in this. I talked to CTI this morning. That's
An hour ago, I'd been interested, but go ahead.
the company that is doing the revamp for the audiovisual in this room finally has all the equipment. They're available towards the end of June
You're
to
right.
do it.
I am very
I
interested.
told you you would be.
You're right.
And they're asking for 2 weeks, so I'll have to coordinate with everybody. So
Okay.
we'll
2
need
weeks.
this room for 2 solid weeks.
So making a little noise, Lee.
I know.
See what happens when you make a
I
little
thought
noise?
you'd be happy.
Sometimes you gotta be a bad guy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Facilities, Daniel, we have space move update. And again, let's keep it,
Yes, a short version. So our little Phase 1, moving the high-speed voting machine out to its new permanent home at the Expo Center has been completed. We have a nice place out there for it to store it now, so it won't have to move back and forth. That's all good. Just got to put some niceties on that now, paint it and all that. But the closet is in there and secure. And Lori was generous enough to give up her space in exchange for a little kitchenette, which I'm still building for her, but that's coming soon as well. Next phase on that, of course, we're right now, we're halfway through or so, about through our 45-day period of letting architects who are interested in looking at our project to remodel the health department. So we'll get those bids at the June meeting, the first June meeting. In the meantime, I'm making up drawings for how we're going to lay out the folks at voters registration over at 157 Franklin, and storage downstairs. So a little piece of that also may include some offices at first floor courthouse. I think we'll call that the end of number 1. Number 2, unless there's other questions on that, space moves.
MOH air conditioning discussion.
Yeah, so on that one, as you know, over the last month or so, we've started with, gosh, we have a big number, we need a lot of work to, working at it, planning for the worst, but then working at it, and got it down to now where we can do this, at least in the short term, get it back to as functional as it was, which is not great, but as functional as it was for about 12,000, 13,000 or so, and so we're proceeding on that as we speak. They're putting that together right now.
And I'm hoping that if we get approval for the Memorial Opera House with the council, that we'll be able to include that as part of that. Because
Great.
we have to do that temporary fix. We have to do it temporary rather than doing a permanent solution, and hopefully we can just.
Right.
And how do we dance around the, say if we move forward with the temporary fix, the council agrees to the permanent fix, did we just wasted a bunch of money on the temporary fix?
A bunch is relative, yeah.
I mean, that's 85 degrees over there.
Trust Laura, it's good.
That's right.
No, it
Yeah.
has to be done. And we went from
All right.
$90,000 down to $12,000, so congratulations to
We went from
Daniel.
90,000 temporary for 1 year down to
Yes.
12,
That was just
probably for the
silly.
duration until, if it's approved, until
Yeah.
it's constructed and redone, so.
Yay,
Yes.
ABM.
All relative, it makes it look a whole lot better.
Upgrade.
Yeah, for sure, so.
My hat to you.
Thank you. And I'll in turn tip my hat to my staff who are doing great at this.
All right, we done there?
All done there.
All right. F.E. Moran, Inc., a change order in the amount of $19,927 for their fire alarm project at the Sheriff's Department.
Yes, sir. So recall that we needed a major upgrade, complete replacement of the fire alarm system at the jail, and that was done for several months of last fiscal year. It was completed right about the end of that fiscal year. In fact, I think it was January 3rd when they finally got that done. It was operational again, and we were mostly made the state fire marshal happy. They pushed near the end there and did a lot more work than they were actually in their scope. And so this is actually a change order for those extra hours, those extra man hours, and a little bit of labor, but mostly time to complete that project.
Okay. We have a contract for F.E. Moran as well to add heat detectors for the pre-action system that covers the control room at the Sheriff's Department in the amount of $17,880.
Yes, so during the work of their work, they discovered that there were, during their explorations of what the issues were there, they discovered that there were no initiating devices. That is to say, the sprinkler system that is in the control room where everything is controlled from. There's nothing that would set off the sprinklers in that room, which is, of course, a problem. It won't work that way. And
So when
we
it was
need to-
initially designed, it wasn't actually hooked up?
It appears that way. From what I can tell, I don't have initial drawings of it. I don't have drawings that actually show locations. But from everything I have, there's nothing to indicate that it was ever right.
Okay,
So obviously, we need to fix that oversight as well.
okay.
So what do we need,
Well, we can probably do both of these since it's the same company.
You can do both 3 and 4.
So if one of you want to make the
I
motion.
move to approve the change order in the amount of $19,927 for the fire alarm project with F.E. Moran, as well as the contract to add heat detectors for the pre-action system that covers the control room at the Sheriff's Department in the amount of $17,880.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Memorial Opera House staff office space.
Oh, there it is. Thank you. And that's the one I mentioned about the first floor. Hey.
Well, Scott's up here.
Again,
Hello again. Yes.
So, I'll let Scott, so when, in our meetings that we were talking about in terms of the renovations, one of the things that Scott mentioned and that I really heard is that he and his assistant Natalie share an office, and part of the work that they do is to be on the phone with donors and other things that happen in the course of business, and it's very difficult for them, concentration-wise, to be both on the phone at the same time. And so what we were trying to do was to find a place. I'd asked Daniel to take a look at 157 Franklin to see if there might be some extra office space over there that we could take advantage, and he said, other than a small conference room, there really wasn't anything. And so we took a look at the courthouse, and I told Scott, I said, I mean, we could use this until we can find something better. And especially since we're going to be doing renovations over there, it's going to be loud, it's going to be dusty, it's going to be a mess over there. And at least they can have a
never
space.
even thought of that. It's true, it's true.
And at least they can have a space. So if you can envision the old probation area on the first floor. So the instant you go through security on the left-hand side, there's a double door. It's locked, and so they would each have keys, and you go straight back. There are 3 offices. They could use the space in front of it as well for conference table, whatever. There's a kitchen, and there's an alcove where they could potentially put their printer and other equipment. Obviously, they could take any more space in there that they would need. It does mean that we want to take that money from the Porter County Foundation, the $4,880.
The historical preservation money?
Yes, for the plaster repair, which isn't just slapping on a coat of paint, but it's actually properly repairing those 3 offices. Now, the mitigating problem behind that plaster problem has been fixed, but they never went back in and fixed the plaster. And we don't want that just to continue. So Daniel actually has at least one estimate from somebody right now.
Right.
To
And
be
they
able
appear to have the experience to do exactly what we need to do to that limestone that's
Yeah.
behind there, as well as fixing the plaster itself, yes.
And then there are desks over there, and Daniel also has filing cabinets and so forth in the lower level of 157 Franklin. There's a bunch of boxes that have to get moved out of there, but Daniel is anticipating that the time frame could be potentially midsummer.
Yes.
But we don't think we'll be starting anything over at the Opera House by then anyway, so.
So what are you asking support to move them over there?
Yeah, essentially,
And you're fine with moving over there?
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Okay. I certainly don't have an issue with it. I mean, it's space that's just sitting there not being used now, and
Can you get into that building at night?
We wouldn't be able to get in at night, so we would need to figure out some space at the Opera House itself, probably the current office space for,
Correct.
Landing pad basically during performances, all of that, because we have cash coming in.
Sure.
All of that, so it's just some adjustment.
Now,
This is a problem that was addressed with our original plan. I should point that out, along with new bathrooms that we're not
at the
getting
tune of
now.
$3.5 million, but go ahead.
Not for the office space.
So, at any rate, I did talk to Lee about the IT, and he said there were so many people that were in that space before that there should be plenty of drops for the internet, and where we envision that alcove there, if that doesn't work for you, obviously you could put that any place you
figure it
want,
out.
but I was thinking that was the most convenient
Sure.
spot for that for you, we're in proximity to the
Again,
office.
we just have some things that we need to figure out, I think, and
Yeah.
do that. We're good at that.
And then the only other thing that Daniel is planning right now for that space is storage for the clerk. So,
All right.
do we need to
Let's have a motion and a second.
Okay, I move that we approve the move of the Memorial Opera House staff to the first floor courthouse space that's vacant currently.
Do I have a second?
No.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion approved. Thank you. Highway Department, Jim Polaric. A request to transfer of funds, Fund 1169, in the amount of $60,000 from account 3730, lease purchase, to account 4420, motor vehicles, funds needed to replacement of JD 6249 loader.
You can do the next one at the same time.
And then we have a Hoosier Equipment, a quote for a Bobcat T770 with attachments. They will be trading in the M6000 sweeper for $7,500, which will bring the total cost to $11,100. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Thank you.
Okay, real quick, I spoke to you, Parks asked for our assistance in loading out some garbage. They have an old building up on Brick Across, it's a wooden barn. I guess it would take a guy and a machine, probably a day, knock it down, load it in dumpsters that they're supplying. So,
Yeah, that's fine. If
Okay.
you feel you have the equipment and the people to do it, fine.
It'll be a rain day project.
Okay.
Yeah. We definitely won't pull off our normal jobs to do it. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Development and Stormwater Management, Bob Thompson. Michael Novotny. We have a resolution authorizing the application submission and local match commitment authorizing the submittal of U.S. Department of Agriculture Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Program Funding Grant.
Yeah, this is our redevelopment commission initiative, so I was just going to ask Stu if he can describe what this is.
I was wondering what he was doing back there.
This is kind of putting the cart before the horse, but the redevelopment commission is going to appropriate the money hopefully at 4:30 today. Once they do, then the application has to be approved by the commissioners. So to meet the June 1st deadline, we're asking your approval, and then we'll ask the redevelopment commission again at 4:30.
Makes sense. Just need a motion.
I so move.
Yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. We have a unified development ordinance pertaining to telecommunications facility standards in regards to institutional zoning, first reading.
I move to approve.
Well, we need to
On
do,
first
We have to
reading?
have a public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
and what this is allowing is
you want a
lattice
description?
tower, what's that?
Well, it allows for communications other than your cell phone, such as microwave transmissions for schools, and also internet connections if they meet certain standards, and institutional allows for an administrative approval.
have to do public hearing, I'm sorry.
All right, we're going to open up, or close this meeting, open up to the public hearing, and we'll start out with anyone wanting to speak in favor of this ordinance, come forward. Anyone wanting to speak in favor of this ordinance, please come forward. Last and final call, anyone wanting to speak in favor of this ordinance, come forward. Anyone wanting to speak against this ordinance, please come forward. Anyone wanting to speak against this ordinance, please come forward. Last and final call, anyone wanting to speak against, or in favor, or is against? Against this ordinance, please come forward. All right, we'll close the public session back into the commissioners' meeting here, and
Okay, I will move that we approve the Unified Development Ordinance pertaining to telecommunications facility standards in regards to institutional zoning on first reading.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. We have a quote for the Wheeler unsafe building demolition.
Yes, originally we went out for quotes on two places, 426 Cottom Drive and 406 Park Avenue in Wheeler. The 406 Park Avenue has since been sold, and a contractor has come in and received permits for rehabilitating that facility, so this is off. 426 Cottom Drive, we received a bid from C. Lee, $11,000. RV Sutton, $18,500. Calumet Excavating, $23,500. Staff recommends that we go forward with C. Lee for the $11,000 price of demolishing or removing 426 Cottom Drive.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Got a road agreement between NIPSCO and the Porter County Board of Commissioners for Phase 2 of the Tasson Pipeline Pipeline Project.
Tassanong Pipeline, this is Phase 2. It's going to be starting up northern part of Union Township, heading south towards Couts. There's a substation in Couts at 150 East and 600 South. This is the road agreement that staff has been working on. We have a $1.5 million bond right now currently with this. And what this road agreement does is tells NIPSCO what they need to do as far as rehabilitating our roads if damaged and stuff.
Okay. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So moved what?
To approve the road agreement between
You're
NIPSCO
learning.
and the Porter County Board of Commissioners for Phase 2 of the Tassanong Pipeline Project.
And we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved.
Just wondering if I was paying attention.
No, you were. Road agreement between Mass Tech and the Porter County Board of Commissioners for Next Era Energy Net Project, NEET, an electric tower line replacement in Union Township.
Correct. This is replacing the electrical lines. You can see the staging area just on the north side of US 30 around 750 West. The roads it affects are around 750 West and around the Wheeler area. It comes up from county line at about 200 north and heads up just east of the Wheeler High School, where NextEra is proposing to replace this. And again, it's a road agreement to cover our roads, 750 West, 300 North, Sedley Road for these projects, and we have $1 million bond now.
Does this have anything to do with their application to build a solar farm?
No, it does not.
Does not. Okay. We'll entertain a motion.
If it doesn't, what does it have to do with?
This road agreement and everything that we have in there has been developed by staff, and it just basically,
No, I mean, why are they doing this?
NextEra actually owns this power line.
they actually own this power line, yes.
So they're rebuilding the transmission line and replacing the old lattice towers with monopole structures.
Okay. Thank you.
I move that we approve the road agreement between Mass Tech and Porter County Board of Commissioners for the NextEra Energy-NEET project.
Second.
I have a motion for approval and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. NDOT awards to Porter County Bridge 12, 61, and 99.
This is just a simple announcement to let everybody know that we have received money for awards. These are for replacing the following bridges. The first two are going to be Group 4 funding that we received from NDOT. Bridge 12, 300 South over Crooked Creek, we received the federal award for $1,316,600. Bridge 61 is 625 West over Breyfogle Ditch. That we received an award for $1,584,000. All of those are within NDOT's fiscal year 2029, so we do have time. We have to get the engineering going here probably later this summer. NERC also awarded us funding since this particular bridge is in the urbanized area. This is Bridge 99, 400 North over Salt Creek for $1,481,200. Total awards that we received for the three bridges, and this just happened back in late March, beginning of April, has been $4,381,800.
Congratulations.
Nice work.
Thank you.
So what do you need from us?
That's just a public
Information?
announcement, I guess, for lack of better words.
Thank you for the announcement, Bob.
Yes.
You're welcome.
A bid
It's
award.
nice to have good news when we get money in instead of spending money.
Yeah, I'm not saying, I'm not expecting it at this point. A bid award for Bridge 40.
This is Porter County Bridge 40 replacement. It's County Road 100 South over Reed's Ditch. This is totally locally funded. This is a bridge that we had to close there for a time period, and they have our engineers come out and put do load ratings on it and determine that it can stay open at an 8-ton limit. So we moved to have it replaced using local fundings. We opened up bids here in this chambers on May 9th. Madam Auditor was present. We have Ellis Construction at $1,039,567.09. Dunnet Bay was $1,129,845.97. Reith Riley Construction came in at $1,199,681.58. Milestone, $1,202,966.40. FH Passion, $1,416,257.84. Gary Up Construction at $1,527,550. We really had a great group of bids. 4 of them were really tight. Staff recommends that we go with Ellis Construction and award a contract to Ellis Construction. They were responsive and
Were they
a
the
good
lowest
bid.
bid?
Huh?
Were they the lowest bid?
They were the lowest bid at $1,039,567.09.
That's Ellis Construction.
Ellis Construction.
Okay. We have a motion.
I move to approve Ellis Construction award for Bridge 40.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. DLZ, an agreement for Bridge 1014.
Bridge 1014 is on North Calumet. It's over CSX Railroad. Brief history on this, since it's North Calumet, it used to be NDOT's bridge. NDOT constructed it. NDOT had 2 overlay projects on this. When 49 bypass opened up, North Calumet became Porter County's road. Thank you, NDOT. I guess, lack of better words. So we need to rehabilitate this bridge. The deck is bad. It doesn't appear that way, but if you drive over it now, you'll see a bunch of orange markings on it, and it's where the concrete is deteriorating on it.
Is this bridge just north of Travis Road?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So we were looking at doing a total deck replacement on this, but then when we dove into this and we received some of the letters of interest on this, Mike and Christy and Antonio agreed with the age of this bridge may not be smart for us to do a deck rehabilitation. So we broke this down into 2 phases. Phase 1 is they're going to be doing a very intense inspection of this bridge, close up, to determine whether or not the beams have microfracture in it, whether the substructure is good on this, because it's approaching the age of 75 years. It's past its engineering life. So the big question is do we want to replace the deck, or will this inspection tell us that we need to replace the whole bridge? So phase one is just that, an inspection, so we can make a determination on how we want to proceed with this bridge.
What would it cost to replace the bridge, and would we get help in replacing the bridge?
We would have to, if we filed to get federal aid on this bridge, we would be looking at probably fiscal year 2030 funding for it. The big question is can the deck last that long? We don't know.
Right.
That is going to be the
Inspection's gonna tell
big.
you a lot.
Yeah, the inspection will tell us a lot. Since this is over a railroad, there's going to be a lot of coordination that has to go with it, and it's probably close to a 100-foot span, if I remember correctly. A 100-foot span, you're probably looking at $2.5 million, would be my estimate right now, in today's dollars. So, I mean, this phase one inspection is going to tell us an awful lot.
Do we have a cost projection for DLZ?
71,200.
200.
That's for the study.
That's just for doing a very detailed inspection of the bridge.
Right. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve a study to be done by DLZ. What was the price again?
71,200.
Let the record show. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Bob, please, if you'd stay during the commissioners' conference, I have a question I need to ask you. You may be able to help me with. Okay. Just to take a second here. Valparaiso Elks, Stephen Davis, he's not here? Okay. We have a request to use the north side of the courthouse grounds on Wednesday, June 14th, from 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. in honor of our country's flag with a traditional program incorporating the complete history of the flag. The program will begin at 6:30 p.m.
I move to approve the request for the Valparaiso Elks to use the north side of the courthouse grounds on Wednesday, June 14th, from 5 to 7:30 p.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Now we get to this portion of it, if there's any other matter. I just want to very quickly, Bob, I'm starting to receive complaints by residents in regard to the Conservation Club with the shooting that goes on there. As we all know, that's a gun shooting range. Less of a conservation club, much less than it is a gun shooting range. And always this time of year, and these homes were there before that gun shooting range was. And this time of year, there always seems to be the struggle about them when they're going to stop shooting. I'm hearing 5 p.m., I'm hearing 30 minutes before dusk, which seems to me to be excessive because, as to when they're starting in the morning, if they're shooting that long during the day. I would like our inspector to go out there and find out, what their operational policies are in that sense. And that a little more cooperation on their part and kindness toward their neighbors would be highly appreciated. I don't want to get involved. I don't want our board involved in this, but I certainly will be if something isn't worked out. Every year I've been in office, every single year, every spring, this comes up. Thank you. Anybody have this, would like to speak to the commissioners before we recess? No? Well, you all have a great Tuesday, or what's left of it?
Wait, looks like Don
Okay.
has something.
Hello. I just have a quick question for my clarity. The $5 million, that's from the ARPA for the Albemarle Opera House, fixing it up and whatnot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Didn't have to stand up to do that, Dawn. Could have just, could have yelled at us.
That's okay.
Anybody else would like to speak to the Board of Commissioners? Thank you very much. Have a great Tuesday.